Welcome back, everybody. This is your Feel Good Breakfast Show. Time to get into our talk for Women's Month. It's the final few days of Women's Month, and this is a bit of hard facts that I'm about to hit you with. Now, according to the World Health Organization, 1 in 3 women have experienced either physical or sexual violence in their lifetimes, while a report by Women in the Workplace found that 35% of women in corporate sector jobs have experienced sexual harassment. Now, these are real issues that affect women in all levels of society.
It is a Monday, and that means we are talking all things relationships, and I suppose this speaks to a broader relationship. And today we are asking, what is the cost of sexual harassment and, most importantly, gender-based violence? The director of the social services organisation Callas Foundation, Caroline Peters, is here to help us try to understand what is going on, and we are taking your questions and comments via our Facebook page. Caroline, when I've got to take in 5 deep breaths, just broaching the subject matter, it speaks volumes. It's the fact that we are still talking about this, the fact that not only is it still such a pervasive element of our society, it seems to be gaining momentum. Why is gender-based violence still such a problem in our country?
I think if we speak gender-based violence, it is definitely on the rise. You know, one of the things that you just mentioned, Jody, was... Jody, sorry.
Well, you can call her whatever you want today.
Sorry. So, you just said 1 in 3 women. A recent study found that every second woman was abused, even unknown. You know, so some of the things that we grow up with, we don't even see it as abuse.
Don't even identify it.
We don't identify it. And the recent study showed that 1 in every 2 women was subjected to some form of abuse during their lifetime. And that is shocking. It is worse than a country that is at war. If you look at rape statistics, every 25 seconds, so just count to 25, another woman is raped. If you look at our femicide figures, every 3 hours, a woman is murdered in our country. So 8 women die daily at the hands of perpetrators. And more than likely, 70% of the time, perpetrators is known to the victim.
And I'm glad that you're hitting us with the facts, because I think a lot of times we almost think that it's died down. Because I remember the last time we spoke, that was in April, we were speaking about that first initial lockdown and, you know, how scared women are, they feel unsafe. Now that we're in, you know, this wave lockdown 3, where do we stand right now with those numbers with regards to sexual harassment as well as GBV?
Just GBV alone. I can tell you, if we look at the figures, during hard lockdown, I mean, we were locked in to save ourselves from the pandemic. However, women were locked in with their perpetrators. And you see that Lisa Vetten just did a study now on that. So it's a year later, and they could research on the figures. And we saw the increase in the amount of violence in the homes. Remember, there was already the conflicts in the homes. There was poverty added to that. People couldn't go out and look for food, or we know that poverty adds to violence. And so we see there was a graph how when we were in level 5, how it increased. As we went down to level 4, level 3, it decreases. But we see a direct link to when the pandemic hit us, perpetrators were now locked in with the victims of violence. Sexual harassment as well. If we look at sexual harassment, we saw now recently, we were all on a webinar, and we saw our woman was attacked on a webinar, an advocate presenting to the High Court around gender-based violence and sexual harassment. And one of the comments from a male on the webinar, not knowing his microphone was on. I mean, we've seen it. It was all out. It was tweeted all over.
Yeah, it went viral, understandably.
It went viral, yes, yeah.
There are so many ways of looking at this, and I think ultimately we want this to be an outcomes-based discussion. So I want you to think about where the answers are, because I'm sure you grapple with that on a daily basis. The cold, hard facts. 1 in 2 South African women will have been raped or sexually abused in their lifetime. They would have experienced violence. On screen right now, you can see a number that you really should have written down. I'm so sorry that every woman in this country needs to have this number on speed dial, 0800 428 428 or 0800 150 150, or you can simply send a please call me. That's star 120 star 7867 hash. Caroline is not going anywhere. We're going to continue our discussion around sexual harassment and gender-based violence.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back as we continue our discussion around sexual harassment and gender-based violence. It is a Monday, so we are speaking to relationships in this a broad perspective of relationships. We are asking, what is the cost of sexual harassment and gender-based violence? We have heard some of the most damning statistics here in South Africa from the director of the social services organization, Colours Foundation, Caroline Peters, here to help us unpack. This is one of those discussions where you're constantly almost thinking out loud because you are searching for answers, striving for answers. Maybe the story that you related to us just now paints I say, wonderful picture in terms of what we're trying to achieve here. When we look at sexual harassment, especially in the workplace, it almost becomes that pinnacle head of this entire argument, the fact that men would feel free to be able to do that. What is the current state of sexual harassment in our country? Are we seeing it, for instance, drift into the virtual space, as you've said? What are the limitations, just so that a woman who is experiencing that can, as you say, start to identify that something is actually not right?
So sexual harassment is part of gender-based violence. So when we speak gender-based violence, it's not in a vacuum. Sexual harassment is one of the facets of gender-based violence. But just like I said to you earlier, we had a webinar with the High Court, an advocate in the High Court presenting about Muslim marriages with a hijab on, and one of the males then comments about the way she looks, not listening to a wise, to a wisdom, to a, intellect. All he saw was a woman that was behaving stupidly. And that went
Purely
viral.
because of what she was wearing.
Purely because of what she was wearing. And that went viral. It took away from the matter that was being discussed. I mean, the Muslim Marriages Act and where women fit into and how women, we know, or because with cultural marriages or religious marriages, that is not legal in terms of South African constitution. But so that went viral for the wrong reason. And it took away from what was presented on that day.
And a vital opportunity to present something that needed to be spoken about. But that then is perpetrated not just against that woman, that advocate speaking, but all women that are connected to that. And it's the stark reminder of just how backward the male headspace is. And if this is happening so frequently, clearly something is not being done about it. What needs to be done? What are the repercussions if you feel that you are being sexually harassed? What do you do? Because surely there's the risk of reprisal in your workspace.
And like we just said earlier, we know with workspaces now how most of us feel we need to show up and be the best because we know economic reasons. I need this job, and especially for younger women, and not just younger women. We see it happening on in every sector of workspaces. However, I mean, we've just seen it happen now in SABC when one of the presenters was suspended. And what stood out for me, I'm not going to mention names, but he said he only touched the shoulder. She's saying, you touched me. And so it's about that. If I don't feel safe in a space, no matter where you touch me, don't touch me, And those are, there's a line, but those are things that men just take for granted. She don't want to be touched by you. So that's sexual harassment. But if I think of gender-based violence, you just asked about what can be done,
The burden of proof. How do we ensure success? Because that's got to be one of the ways that we can fight this, is with successful prosecutions. A woman having the strength, first of all, to stand up and be able to state her case is one massive journey in itself. But how do we affect prosecution? What does a victim need to do? So
I just want to make an example. On Friday night, I get a call. I've got a protection order. My ex-boyfriend is violating the order. Police at SAPS is not assisting me. And of course, off I go. I say, get me in the hail on Friday night at the police station outside, and I go inside with her. And the police officer says to her, a woman, female police officer says to her, now where's your proof that he did this? You know, there's a protection order. And I start speaking on her behalf, and she says to me, she must speak. And I'm saying, I'm here to support her, because we know when women are in violent relationships, their self-confidence is deflated, they've lost their voice. So I'm speaking on her behalf, and I'm explaining this to her. And at the end, we left the police station, but a charge was laid and he needed to go and be arrested. So that is why we need SAPS, we need Department of Justice, we need collaboration with DSD, with the health department. We've just seen with some statistics now, when we spoke about teenage pregnancies, we do not speak about 10 to 14-year-old children. Girls, those are girls.
Yeah.
That was statutory rape. So the headlines would read teenage pregnancies.
Not teenage rape.
Not teenage, yes, you know, and it's reading teenage pregnancies, but we do not speak about the rape that has occurred there, because it is illegal to have sex with an under 16-year-old. So it means she was 9 years old when she was impregnated. If a 10-year-old is giving birth now, you know, that's a child. So we do not speak about that. DSD cannot tell us how many cases, how many charges has been laid against these perpetrators. So there's no collaboration between DSD, Department of Health, Department of Social Development, Department of Health, South African Police Service, and then, of course, the justice system. You know, we see conviction rates.
Just non-existent at the moment. The harsh reality is, while we have been speaking now, every 25 seconds, a woman in this country has been raped. Every 25 seconds. We are talking about gender-based violence. Caroline's going to stick around for one more discussion.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Enough is enough. In the face of horrific statistics that we've covered this morning, we are searching for answers today. Obviously, being a Monday, we are talking relationships, and we are asking, what is the cost of sexual harassment and gender-based violence? And we are back with the Director of Social Services Organisation, Cullis Foundation, Caroline Peters, who has been blowing my mind. Obviously, you've worked at the coalface and dealt with so many women who are in the, and I know that, yes, it crosses both ways, but predominantly women are being abused in this country. Why do women not have a voice? What happens in that dynamic that allows this to continue happening?
So one of the things is, when we know women lose their agency, like we say, or they become disenfranchised, their power is taken away from them. We will see it with even, you think now, why doesn't she just leave?
Yeah.
You know, women stay for various reasons. Women stay because church says stay. Women stay because religion says stay. And women stay because of the family. You know, and I often look at women, children. We stay because we want to keep the family together. Women stay for economic reasons. Women stay because they hope for change. They hope to find that same man that they fell in love with. And they will say, actually, he's not so bad, it's his work. You know, it's the pressure at work, and he comes back here. So I've heard so many, I've been in the sector for almost 30 years, and I've heard so many different reasons of why women stay.
It's also the pattern, it's generational. It's a pattern repeating itself over and over, and if that's all a woman knows, she's willing to accept so much more. But I'm sure when children are involved, there is nothing that a woman won't endure to protect that child. So I certainly understand that. What needs to happen? What do we need to do to address this finally, to summate?
Like I said to you earlier, every person should be a safe space, a safe person for women. If I just, you know, I had a question on Saturday, what must I do? She don't want, and I said, you know, just be there for her. And I know that perpetrators alienate their victims from family, from friends.
Isolate them, yeah.
They isolate them, so what do? You stay there, you be the safe person. When she's ready, you encourage her to seek help. You create code words. During lockdown, we had code words. We were selling Cook Sisters. but in the guise of selling Cook Sisters, if you tell me, do you sell Cook Sisters? I say yes. I then ask, I can deliver, what is your address? In that way I have your address. So then I check in with you daily. And what happened, when you ask me what's the price of your Cook Sisters, I know I need to send the police, you know. We also speak about interruption. Sometimes we say it is their problem. Gender-based violence is all of our problem. It is not a private matter.
No,
interrupt
not anymore.
the violence, not anymore. When we live in communities, I always say, send a child around. We would just make noise outside. You know, someone said last night, knock on the door, go ask for a bit of sugar. You know, that happens in communities. Knock on the door, go ask for some sugar. You interrupt the violence. When you see it happen, see something, say something. Don't look away. See something, say something. And I always say, because we keep quiet, the violence will continue. We see the violence escalate. It never gets better. And I say to women, it will not get better unless there is intervention. So see something, say something to all of us.
Just imagine if every man in this country could become that safe place. Caroline, bless you for the work that you do on the daily basis. Stay safe, yes. And keep looking after your own mental health.
Yes.
During what must be an unbelievably difficult time. We know that lockdown this last year and a half has exponentially increased the pressures that are on South African families, but enough is enough.